Welcome to the Internet Marketing Funnel Podcast. I'm David Bain. Hi, and welcome to another edition of the podcast brought to you by InternetMarketingFunnel.com. This is part 2 of my interview with Craig McGill, who's a specialist in PR 2.0. In this section we cover the power of podcasting and the pros and cons of blogging. How would you go about advising your clients on how to actually harness the power of podcasts for PR?
I think the two things that any client willing to do podcasts has to be aware of is, first of all, they have to make sure that they can speak relatively well and clearly. That sounds like a basic 101 to use an Americanism, but I've been very surprised when you even see people on the television now and so-called experts and pundits, and you're shocked at not how hard it is for them to project their voice, but just how much it's a struggle at times for them to pull together a coherent sentence. Obviously, and I've just said I'm there myself, so that's for the blooper reel. But I think one of these things, as I've said to people, is look, you can speak slower, that's not a problem. It gives you a little bit more clarity, but at the same time, don't drone. It's one of these things, a podcast especially, there's nothing wrong with people having a couple of notes in front of them. It's not like doing a speech to a crowd or a speech to video where people can tell you're reading off a crib sheet. A crib sheet can just help to keep the brain flowing. But the one thing I think with a podcast that people always do have to remember is, like a speech, it's better to be short than long. Lots of people think that a long podcast, the length gives them the quality. I don't think so. I think 6-7 minutes on one topic is all most people are willing to listen on. And if it's interesting enough, they'll come back for more on that topic. And if it's not been to their particular tastes, then it's something that they can go, well, it was only 6 minutes. It's no big waste of time. I know a couple of banks out there are doing 45-minute podcasts, and very few people I've spoken to make it all the way through. They're kind of just going as far as 10-15 minutes and then giving up the ghost on it, which is a shame for the content in the other part of the show. Whereas if they broke that 40 minutes into 4 10-minute chunks or 8 5-minute chunks, it works a lot better. Brief is better. And again, what people have to remember after that is, like a website, it's out there for all eternity. It's one thing for companies to advise, especially PR companies who aren't as briefed in the corporate environment as BT and other big firms can sometimes say, just go out there and say something shocking to get the publicity. But the danger there now is you can say something shocking, you can do the podcast on it, but 5-10 years down the line, it may just come back to haunt you, because these things are out there now, and they're out there for good. It's not so much a case of the horse is bolted. The horse is long gone on a plane and docked with the ISS and is never coming back to your house. So it's there. You've got to be very careful of these things. It's the old saying, someone said to me once, I'm assuming it's an old saying, don't say anything on the web that you wouldn't want your mother to hear you say. And I think for about 90% of cases that may well be the case. The other 10% is don't say anything you wouldn't want a prospective job employer to hear you say. And that ranks obviously from people at my level to corporate CEOs, because you never know whom will go looking to find out information about you, especially nowadays when it's more common for companies who are either hiring another company or a person. They will go and Google them to see what information they can find on them. And obviously search engines get more sophisticated. If there are podcasts as well, people will go and listen to the podcasts. To see, I know, for example, some newspapers have seen emails and heard podcasts of people moaning about the media, and it's been enough to stop them getting job interviews, which is a bit of a shame, but it's one of these things that will become more and more of a problem as we move forward.
Right.
And I kind of drifted away there, but I think one thing that may affect companies from a press point of view on is that you'll see companies perhaps criticising a competitor, and this will have a knock-on effect in that, say, PR company ABC represents a bank. Another bank may take the huff with ABC purely because they've been involved with a podcast that's seen the competition be criticised. And this may lead to a more neutral stance or more neutral opinions being put out there, which may not make for such great copy, but it will shoot down the sensationalism in the long term, which may take some of the fun out of the game.
Blogging and podcasts, obviously they are still options available for businesses to actually have more of a personal voice in the corporate world. Would you've mentioned there that it's a little bit of an issue potentially for someone to actually voice their own personal opinion within a blog. So would you tend to actually advise companies to allow all their managers to have their own blog within the company, or is that a dangerous route to go down?
I think it's a tricky one, because on the one hand it's nice if people can see what a company is doing. And one thing I've said to people before joining BT who have wanted to set up blogs in medium-sized companies is, that's fine if you've got something to offer. If you've got 25 middle managers who all just want to put a blog out so they can say they've got a blog, then it's useless. Two reasons for that are, any good message in there gets diluted because there's 25 people doing it, and also a lot of those people will just do it for a couple of weeks and then lose interest when they discover they're not internet superstars. And a sort of tertiary spin-off of that is the fact that some may not like the fact that the comment section can have all sorts said about you. Most people set blogs up either to present facts or to be loved, and quite often if you set one up to be loved, the downside is that people may come back with responses you certainly don't want. But it's something a company can still do it. I would still advise, if a company wants to show a little bit of behind the scenes, or if they have someone with strong and interesting opinions, I would still advocate that they should do it. But, and this is where you'll see the obvious flaw in the argument here, everyone's blog should be read from a PR point of view or from an internal perspective before it's sent out on release, just in case there is something contentious, controversial, or legally risky. And the problem that has with the blog culture is that it goes against the spirit of just logging into Blogger or TypePad and sending it away. You know, jotting down your thoughts, click blog, and it's done. That doesn't happen as easily if it has to be approved by someone else in the corporate process.
That's the end of this podcast, but you can subscribe to updates which tell you as soon as another episode is published at internetmarketingfunnel.com/podcast.